I had this epiphany not too long ago because I was talking to some friends about it. And, they were like, why do you put so much effort in the weekends to doing this? And I realized that while I love flying drones and I love the technology, it's really kind of building the community and also kind of cracking the code of YouTube that's been fun for me.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 149. What do we do when we're passionate about drones? If you ask today's guest, he would say, create a YouTube channel with more than 75,000 subscribers. Kelly Shores lives in Austin, Texas with his wife and 2 children. By day, he's involved in video production. But in his off time, he runs a successful YouTube channel called Ready, Set, Drone, where he showcases his experiences with drones. Since 2014, he has produced hundreds of videos featuring product reviews, lessons learned, and personal drone perspectives. As I mentioned, his channel attracts more than 75,000 loyal subscribers who tune in regularly to find out what Kelly is up to with drones. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Kelly talks about how he turned his passion for drones into a successful YouTube sensation and gives some advice to others who would like to create their own online drone presence. But before we hear from Kelly, I want to thank those of you who have been supporting my funding campaign on Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to patreon.com/drone radio show to join the team. Now let's learn how we can become a drone YouTube sensation with Kelly Shores. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Kelly to introduce himself.
My name is Kelly. I run a YouTube channel and a website called Ready, Set, Drone, and I have been producing videos on it since 2014. It's recently been growing pretty rapidly, which has gotten me more interested in it. Seems like the more it grows and the more audience I get, the more I devote to it. I first saw my first drone live when I was working on a video production for 50 acres of land near a lake in Texas that someone was selling, and I was hired to create a video for that 50 acres and thought I would hire a drone pilot. So I hired a guy named Justin Edwards, who has a website called Drone Above. Great guy. He had, I think it was an S900 or an S1000 early DJI hexacopter with a mirrorless camera on it, a Sony camera, and just blew my mind with it. And I was like just so excited. I was going to go out and buy one of those big rigs, but he told me that they were coming out with a Phantom shortly thereafter, the Phantom 1. So I waited and I bought the Phantom 1 along with a bunch of other toy drones, and I've been hooked ever since.
Kelly, how did you start the YouTube channel?
So the first YouTube video I did was for the Estes Proto X, which is one of the first tiny little drones that ever came out, like slightly bigger than a quarter, maybe bigger than that, but, not very big, lands in your hand kind of thing. And I got that for $30 at a hobby store and was just like blown away with how tiny it was. It was the first time I'd seen it. I hadn't seen them anywhere else. And I thought, this might be a popular topic to put on YouTube. So I did a quick little review of it, of the Proto X, the Estes Proto X. And it was not super popular. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention, but I kept making videos every so often, probably 1 or 2 a month for a period of time. And then I got the 3DR Solo. I made a video about that, and that one really took off and made me realize, oh, wow, there's something to this.
So were these your personal views of the drone, or were you trying to do an in-depth overview of the product?
Back when I started, my reviews were a lot more just kind of my opinion of it, and hey, look at this, it's really cool. At the time, a lot of people hadn't seen a drone, even a toy one, in person. They weren't as common. And, I was just kind of like blown away by them. So I think it was more just sort of a sharing this new cool product I had found than it was a lot of research.
When did things start to pick up?
When I got the 3DR Solo in 2015, I did a review of the Solo. I unboxed it and took it for a flight. And that video, I think it got 100 views overnight. And I'd never gotten 100 views overnight before. And I was like, whoa. So I did a few more videos about the Solo. I did a comparison of it to the Phantom 4. I started doing more and more videos about that product. And I came to realize that when there's a big product that's coming out, if you can get your hands on it early, a lot of people are interested in learning about it because these aren't cheap. And a lot of people, while they're interested, may not want to drop $1,000 before they check it out first. And watching YouTube videos about it is a good way to check it out.
To do that, are you buying the drones on a regular basis?
I buy some, and I have some shipped to me by the manufacturers. It's kind of a mix of the two. Obviously, the higher end drones are a little harder to come by without having to buy them. But yeah, it's kind of a combination. I mean, if I wanted a new drone every day, I could get one. But so many of them are very similar. A lot of them are just little toys with, kind of a Wi-Fi app and a cheap camera. And I've tried to get to be a little bit more particular about how many of those I review just from a time and effort perspective.
How many drones do you have?
That is a great question. It's a rotation. I give a lot of drones away to friends of my kids. I have a subscriber of the month contest on my YouTube channel. I just gave a Spark away to my subscriber of the month, Big Drone Flyer 77, if you want to check him out on YouTube. And I also give them away as contests on the channel. So probably in my garage right now, I'd probably say there's 40, including a bunch of little toys and some that still have to be built. But that number fluctuates up and down. And most of those 40 are small little racing drones or toys. Probably about 10 or 12 of them are, DJI or higher end drones.
I'm curious, how has the YouTube channel been accepted by the community?
I had this epiphany not too long ago because I was talking to some friends about it. And, they were like, why do you put so much effort in the weekends to doing this? And I realized that while I love flying drones and I love the technology, it's really kind of building the community and also kind of cracking the code of YouTube that's been fun for me. I've learned so much about how to get seen on YouTube, and not in a way that is sneaky or clickbaity, in a way that people actually enjoy what you're making. Because ultimately, I've realized that YouTube is not a video platform, it's a community platform. And that if you can get people engaged and get people watching you on a regular basis and get people commenting on your videos and then commenting on the comments, where you have someone answering someone else's question, all that kind of stuff really drives the channel and makes it worthwhile. So that's been my goal, to not make it just a place where I spit out content, but a place where people come to learn and communicate with each other. And as an example, I get up almost every morning before the rest of my family and spend about 45 minutes going through my stats and answering comments and direct messages. So, I try really hard to engage with everybody that comments on the channel, even the people that say negative things. I at least want to acknowledge them. And, if it's something that is actually legit, I'll acknowledge it and say, hey, that's a good suggestion. And if it's something that's just being mean, I'll acknowledge it and say, hey, thanks for your opinion.
How many subscribers do you have on YouTube?
I think 75,000 currently.
That's great.
By the time you publish this, it could be 80 because it's growing really fast right now. Ever since Christmas, it's really just been on a bit of a tear. Last year, I had a big upsurge at the end of last year and then was pretty slow for a while for the first couple of months of last year. And then it picked up again, and then it slowed down in the summer, and then it picked up in the fall kind of thing. So it seems to be a little cyclical, but pretty much since November of 2017, it's been growing pretty strong.
What have been some of the challenges in creating the channel?
The biggest challenge for creating my YouTube channel has just been having the time to dedicate to it. I work full time. I have a family. And the good news is my family is very supportive. My son and daughter both participate in my videos. My daughter helps me with my Instagram page, which, by the way, if you're on Instagram, check out Ready, Set, Drone. It's been growing like crazy thanks to my daughter's help. My wife's supportive, especially now that it's starting to make a little bit of money, and I give a lot of it to her, so that keeps her engaged and happy about it. But yeah, it's really just having the support of a family and the time to do it, and then also making sure that I'm not spending so much time on that I forget other things that are important in life as well, including my regular job.
Do you have a favorite review that you can share?
Actually, I can tell you my most memorable review really at this point is still pretty fresh. It was the Mavic Air, which just came out a few weeks ago. And the reason that was really memorable for me is because I was contacted by DJI and able to get a pre-production model and release that review before it was available to the general public. And I'm not saying that in a bragging way. I'm just saying that that really was special for me to be on that short list of people who got one before it came out.
Well, it does show that the effort that you put into it is starting to gain some attention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other opportunity you mentioned in one of your questions about writing an article, I also have had a chance to write a couple of articles for DJI. If you go to the website and you click on the buyer's guides, I've written 2 of their buyer's guides for drones, which has been a cool relationship as well.
Is there a review or a video segment that you've been wanting to write that you just haven't had a chance?
It's funny you should say that. I actually am under contract with a publisher to write a book for kids. It's going to be a STEM, science, technology, engineering, math book about drones. And I signed that contract just a few days ago. The first draft of the book is due in late June. I'm kind of working on a timeline right now for getting it done. My hope is that it will be done in time for the school year, for 2018-2019 school year. But I have some grace period there. They're not expecting it to be done until spring of 2019. It's a company that sells into schools. They sell into school libraries, public libraries. They have a good relationship with every school district in the U.S. And so I have a built-in audience for the book. Now I just have to write it.
Can you share how that came about? I mean, how did you get in position to write a book?
They actually found me on YouTube and direct messaged me. And, I get a lot of those direct messages, and I was just kind of perusing them. And this one looked really interesting. So I replied and started a dialogue. And then the funny thing was, they're based in New York. And I was up in New York for the launch of the Mavic Air just recently on January 23rd. And so at that same time, I met with this publishing company, had a great meeting with them, kind of shared their vision for what they wanted to do, and so signed the contract with them.
What do you feel are some of the common mistakes that people make when they're looking for a drone?
Well, I'll say when they're looking for a drone, my advice is always to buy a cheap drone with no GPS built in and learn to fly it, learn to hover it. You don't have to be a FPV racing expert or anything to be a good pilot, but you should be able to at least hover a drone in front of you and rotate the yaw 360 degrees without losing control on a drone that has no GPS, or, even if it does have GPS, turn the GPS off. So that's my first thing is I think a lot of people want to start with a really expensive drone, and the expensive drones are actually easier to fly. And so I could see the sort of mentality for wanting to start with one that's easier to fly. But I feel like if you learn how to fly a toy drone with no GPS, even that little Estes Proto X I was talking about is a great little indoor drone to learn how to fly. Once you get comfortable with that, flying a more expensive drone is a lot easier, and you'll be a lot more confident. And I think it's safer because you kind of know what to do in any situation, and you're not 100% reliant on the technology like you are. It's going to be like when our kids are in self-driving cars. It's a great idea to learn how to drive a car and even learn how to drive a stick shift before you get into a self-driving car, so that if you ever had to do it, you could.
Anything else they should be aware of?
I actually have a video called 7 Common Mistakes Beginners Make, and then I have another one called 5 Skills You Should Learn. The main things on those are people try to fly too high. They'll get their drone out, and the first thing they'll do is, throw it up a couple 100 feet in the air. And if it doesn't have GPS, you're going to lose it because the wind is much stronger up there, and it's very hard to control the drone as a new pilot close to the ground, let alone way up in the air. So don't fly super high when you first get your drone. And quite honestly, I don't see a need to fly super high just about any time. There's hardly any time I need to go more than 200 or 300 feet in the air. And then the other thing I would say is when they're learning how to fly, they also rely on things like headless mode on a toy drone. Headless mode automatically orients the drone for you. Learn how to fly without headless mode first, and then you can use headless mode if you want to. But, that's a mistake I see a lot of people making, is kind of shortcutting to the easier to fly drones, and then they don't have the real skills for when things go wrong.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Now, what are your top drones for 2018?
I have to say I love the Mavic Air. It is really amazing. I was a big fan of the Mavic Pro. I'm looking forward to seeing the one that Autel's coming out with. I think it's called the Evo. That's supposed to be kind of a equivalent to the Mavic Air. I am a big fan of the Bugs drones, like the Bugs 3 and the Bugs 2 and the Bugs 8. If you've ever flown any of those, the Bugs 2 is really cool because it has GPS built in, and it's fairly inexpensive, $250 or so, and it's really fun to fly. And it has 5.8 gigahertz FPV, so you can actually do some real FPV flying with it if you wanted to. I'd say that the Air, the Bugs 2, and then I'm always a big fan of SEMA. They make great drones. The SEMA X5C has been my number one recommended drone for all new pilots since I started flying. And then also Force One. Force One actually just relicenses UDI drones. So full disclosure, they take UDI drones and they put their own branding and colors on them. But the reason I like Force One is a couple things. Number one, they always give you 2 batteries. Most drones only come with 1, and Force One always includes a second battery. Number 2, a lot of times they come with different skins you can put on the drones. They'll have ones that pop off and you can apply a different color to it. And then number 3, they just have great customer service. A lot of people get frustrated by some of these companies, perhaps overseas, that they're having to work with. Force One is based here in the U.S. They sell on Amazon, and I've witnessed people having issues with them and them getting right back to the people and solving their problems right away. So there's a long list for you.
Since you've been doing the videos, what's changed most in the industry, in your opinion?
Obviously, drones have become a lot more mainstream, which I think is a good thing. I would say that there's also a lot more opportunity for people to make mistakes, meaning that, you hear about close calls with airplanes, you hear about people flying over stadiums or crashing into buildings and things they shouldn't be doing. So, I think as you grow anything to more and more people, you're going to have your people that play by the rules and your people that don't. And so, unfortunately, I think we've just got to be very vigilant and very, as a community, make sure that we're really promoting the right things to do. A lot of people are annoyed with some of these things that DJI does in their app, for example. You have to take a skills test before you fly your first time with your drone. It asks you 10 questions. But I love it. I think that's such a great thing. It asks you 10 very basic questions about flying near airports. How high can you fly? How far away can you fly? And if you just got a drone for Christmas or something and you didn't know those things, it's a great way to kind of teach you some really basic rules. So unfortunately, I think the rules are going to get stricter, but I also think that if we can all follow them and have very few incidents, that will help. And then in terms of where things are headed, obviously the tech is just getting better and better. I also think there's going to be a lot of things that drones can do that we haven't even realized yet. And I'm excited to see what those things are.
Getting back to your community, what kind of questions do they typically bring to you?
A lot of times they want to know how far and how high a drone will go. That seems to be my number one question. I posted a video a couple of weeks ago of a range test with the Mavic Air, and that thing just went bananas. I drove out to the country and flew it over. I was at a friend's ranch and flew it out kind of over his ranch a ways off, and boy, people just went crazy for that. So I always get asked how far drones will go, and my answer really is, how high will it go? 400 feet, because that's as high as you're supposed to go. And how far will it go? Line of sight, because that's how far you're supposed to go. Beyond that is just asking for trouble. The other kind of questions I get asked a lot are which drone to begin with. How do I get into being a YouTuber? I get that question asked a lot. I also get a lot of questions about which my favorite drones are. And that's a tough one because I love some of the little toy drones because they're so much fun to play with indoors. I love camera drones. I love FPV drones. It just depends on the mood and the situation. But ultimately, as I said, it's a great community online all over the place, in the forums, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on podcasts. I think there's just so many cool people that are into drones right now that it's fun to hear all the questions.
What's this whole experience taught you?
Doing YouTube has taught me, number one, that building a community is the most important part of having an online presence. More important, I think, than anything else. And if you're doing everything right, then you are going to be building a community. You can't build a community with bad content. You can't build a community with clickbait. You can't build a community if all you're after is people's money. So it's taught me that. It's also taught me that, working in drones and such is exciting, but at the same time, it can get really repetitive unless you're creative and come up with new ideas. So I'm always trying to figure out new, interesting things that people would want to know, and that kind of keeps me sharp.
How does someone become a YouTuber like yourself? Any tips?
Again, it's about building a community, and it's about being responsive to people and answering questions and not coming across as fake. I think that's the number one thing. If you come across as fake, people can recognize that. And if you come across as real, people can recognize that as well. And so I sometimes leave some of my mistakes and some of my vocal tics and some of my stupid things I do, like, not tightening propellers on a drone before I take off and the propellers fly off. I leave some of those in the video so people can see that I'm just as big of a nut job as anybody else.
What would you like to share most with people based on what you've learned?
You hear a lot of complaints about companies, and I think some of it's warranted, but I also think some of it's not. I think the drone industry, just like us, is learning as they go. I would say let's just try to really keep our safety high no matter what. Every time we have a near incident or an incident with a drone and an aircraft or something like that, it just gives me the willies because I'm afraid that, there's going to be an overreaction to that. So I would say keeping safety high, putting in safety factors, and then I guess allowing people to get more autonomy if they can prove that they're flying safely. It's kind of one of those things where I feel like just like driving, flying a drone is a privilege. It's not a right. And so if we can all treat it as a privilege and do it the right way, I feel like the drone manufacturers and companies out there will continue to give us more and more features and more autonomy and not be quite as big brother. But there's got to be a balance.
Where do you hope things will go with your YouTube channel?
I do this for fun. As I said, this is not my full-time gig, and I don't know that it ever will be. It would be cool if it was. I guess ultimately the channel will be successful if the community says it's successful and continues to give positive feedback and participate. Ultimately, I do think that if it could grow to a point where it was self-sustaining and I could have a team of people helping produce videos and help with marketing and all that sort of thing, that would be pretty awesome. But I'm just kind of having fun with it and not getting overly taxed about quote unquote success or failure.
Being able to make it self-sufficient and to afford a team, that's like the holy grail of all podcasters and YouTubers.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the original goal on it was to pay for drones, and it's met that goal and then some. So I will say it's also afforded me, like going to New York for the launch event and writing this book, that opportunity wouldn't have come up without the channel. And it's afforded me the ability to do some things. And, most of the money I make on YouTube and affiliate links, I put back into it, either buying new equipment, new drones, new cameras, all that sort of thing. So, it's kind of allowed me to fuel my hobby.
You may have touched upon this earlier, but what advice would you give to others who want to create a web presence like you have?
That question comes up more and more. And honestly, it's a question that I feel like I've been meaning to do a video about and kind of just talk about my philosophy for YouTube. But I'd say in a nutshell, you have to be consistent. You can't just publish once and then forget it for 3 weeks and then publish again and, maybe publish twice and then forget it for 3 weeks. You have to be consistent because your audience won't stick around if you're not. I think you also have to offer something that other people don't, some sort of uniqueness. If everybody did exactly the same thing, what's the point? I think you should also embrace your own style. If there's something about you that's different, even if you feel like it's a inhibitor, I'm not the best looking guy, but I'm still on video and people seem to like it. So, I kind of go with that everyday guy kind of thing for my channel. And also having my kids involved, I think people like to see that, so find something that makes you unique and be consistent, and also just kind of really put yourself under the microscope and say, hey, if this wasn't me, would I want to watch this? Is this content I would actually watch? And if it is, then you're doing the right thing. If it's not, then you should go back to the drawing board.
That's it for episode 149 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Kelly Shores of Ready Set Drone and learning how you can turn your passion for drones into a successful enterprise. I want to thank Kelly for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Ready Set Drone or want to connect with Kelly, check him out on YouTube at Ready Set Drone. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1 per month, you can help defray the costs of production. To donate, go to patreon.com/Drone Radio Show. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.